The Access to Capital educational series, The Fundamentals of Startup Financing, is made possible by the generous financial support of the Truist Foundation. Access to Capital is an educational program of Verge and its affiliates, RAMP, the Regional Accelerator, Roanoke-Blacksburg Technology Council, and its partners, the Launch Place, the Appalachian Council for Innovation, and Blue Ridge PBS.
Steve, thank you for being with us. We're excited to hear your background in raising money for the multiple startups that you've been behind. And in your current startup, Cider Recovery, as CEO, we'd love to hear a little bit about the background, the historical story of the company, and then we'll get into learning about how you've raised money for.
Well, sure. It's a great story, actually. Most of these start out, and this one did too, as a problem solving by Dr. Rafael Davalos, who's a professor of bioengineering at Virginia Tech. And he had the problem of finding these very rare cancer cells called cancer stem cells from tumors. They're in very small numbers. And so he invented a way to sort cells and find those cells and recover them for studies. And that technology, of course, was owned by Virginia Tech. And a dear friend of mine, Leo Harris, who was a prominent tech alum, financed the early work to support their research. And then about 5 years ago, he invited me in to form a company around it and serve as CEO to build a commercially successful company based upon the technology.
Great. What a great backstory. In biotech, it's a little different than some of our other technologies, that it takes so many years of research to commercialize the work that you're currently doing. So thank you for sharing that. Thinking about the early days of Cider Recovery and in the early stages, once it became a company, it came out of the lab per se, from the research component to going into more of a commercialized direction. Where did you start raising money once the company was formed and you came on as CEO?
Well, as a pre-seed, those of us who were early in the company supported it. And I began to hire our first couple of payrolls. So at that stage, you're really what's called pre-seed, and you need to show that you have a credible business plan, some initial critical mass of support from outside advisors, initial employees. You need to show that you have all the pieces in place to build a successful company, and then you can get to the seed stage or the next stage. So in the early days, you run as tight as you can, and you raise it anywhere you can, and get through that first pre-seed stage.
What was the most important part of preparing for the Series A round? What advice would you give our other entrepreneurs and how to prepare for a Series A?
Sure. Well, a Series A is kind of graduation day. You're reached a point of development, you're either selling your products or you've met your major milestones, and you're ready for institutional money instead of just individual money. So one thing that happens along the way, you're so focused on the product or the major milestones that you might not have done everything you need to do in the way of governance. And so to prepare for a Series A, you need to not only have met your development milestones, but make sure that your P's and Q's and I's are dotted and your T's are crossed. Go back through your records, develop a corporate data room, make sure your agreements are in place. Clean things up, board minutes and records, financial statements, because that's all infrastructure that a Series A investor is going to expect to see in place.
Yeah. Did you have your board established when you went into your Series A?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I have two great directors, James Ramey and Vinod Chakra.
Great.
And they've been with us for many years.
We've talked a lot about when's the right time to bring on a board of directors and how in your capital journey, when is the right time to bring on the advisors?
That's a great question. And again, it's something you don't think about in your early focus, which is relentlessly on getting the product developed, getting your first customers. But, it takes a lot of people to build a company. And the sooner you can bring in people with skill sets that may complement your own skill sets, the better. And a board that speaks its mind in a kind and supportive manner can be a real help to the lonely and challenging job of a CEO.
Yeah, that's great. I know you and Alex Heiler went through our RAMP program in the spring. Can you talk a little bit about that experience? I mean, you've been through multiple startups and going through the accelerator with Alex. How did that help position Alex and other team members?
Yeah, it's a great program. Really, you should expand it. You should put as many people as you can through that, whether they're involved in a startup or thinking about it or indirectly. But it forces you to focus on the critical elements of starting a business. We're all busy. We all have our daily lives pretty well worked out. So you're forced to free up enough time to really think about the few critical elements of starting a company. Who is your customer? What is the product or service? Yeah. Validate that this is real and people really are going to value it and purchase it from you. So it's a really great local program. Great,
yeah. We agree. We're a little biased, but we agree. Thinking about raising money this round in this company versus other companies that you've led in the past, what are some of the differences today than in your past? What have you learned?
Well, it's more sophisticated today. And when I started out was in really the first generation of life science, when the DNA technologies were just coming out in the 70s. And in the first generation, you didn't really know how to value it. Your market focus wasn't as good. There was a lot of the unknown. And today, your audience, your prospective investors are more sophisticated. They know what to ask about, what to look for. They're able to really de-risk their investment. And that's where the entrepreneur needs to focus, is to provide the answers to questions that relate to financial risk or marketing risk, development risk. So I think the bottom line is it's more incumbent now on the entrepreneur to be better prepared with answers for the kind of questions they're going to get from investors.
Yeah. How many of the companies that go through RAMP, the founder, the CEO is coming from the lab, or they're a technologist, they're really technical. What is your advice to a startup who has a founder that their background has been in the lab? Thinking about the business side, the capital side, what advice would you give to our entrepreneurs?
Well, first I'd encourage them to do it. And once they get that bug. And as they go forth, number one, believe it or not, marketing and sales is just as important a professional discipline as the one that they were brought up in and got their PhD in. And there's a lot there that they would be better off bringing in people to help them as mentors, so they don't just go through and stub their toe 10 times in the first couple of years.
That's great advice.
And so it takes a lot of people to build a company. The sooner they can get people that can help them through the sales and marketing aspect of planning and development, the better.
Great. So from here, where does Cyto Recovery go? What's the next type of capital that you'll be going after? What's your game plan going forward?
Well, it's a great question. I'm a big believer when you do a round, you structure your finances so that you don't have to do another round to the best you can. And that's, of course, not always possible. But to the extent it is, run as lean as you can. Work on your next financing as soon as you've finished your current one. Don't rest on your laurels and spend your money, and then when you get near the end, suddenly wake up in the morning and decide you needed to raise money. In our case, we have a lot of options now after the Series A. You have corporate partnerships. You don't have to just go back to institutional VCs. Operating companies love to work directly with you and will invest in you when you're at that stage of development. So we envision corporate partners, possible Series B, or other types of options.
Great. Being in Southwest Virginia, we have so many assets to support entrepreneurship. From the capital side, what have you seen as an advantage of being in this region to raise money?
Well, you have a gold mine here. You really do. You are undiscovered relative to the level of technology that you have, and the combination of Virginia Tech for the basic sciences, the discovery level, combined with the Carilion Medical School, gives you the two pieces you need to rapidly take new discovery, apply it to a medical problem, whether it's a device or a discovery of any time, a drug target. So you have all the pieces now in place to do that. And I think now you're being discovered as a opportunity for investment. You have a lot more. Just in the 5 years I've been operating here, I've seen big changes in the attraction and the interest from outsiders.
Great, great. Well, thank you, Steve. Thank you for your time today. We really appreciate your time and your wealth of knowledge.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.